From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo, and this is From the South. A group of about 800 migrants has set out from Mexicali towards Tijuana to join the caravan already at the border. While many in Mexicali were able to find room inside shelters, others were not so lucky. They are reportedly going to Tijuana in hopes of finding shelter while waiting on their asylum requests.
This group you see here is planning to go to Tijuana to see if they can accommodate us or to see if we can get by over there. The truth is that we are a large crowd and we want to see how we can head to Tijuana, even if we can get rides or at least get on the back of trucks, or maybe catch a bus and go bit by bit and see how we can help anyone who couldn't make it. The truth is that there is no room for us here in Mexicali.
The idea of the caravan was for all of us to stay together since the day we set out. They say that the meeting point will be Tijuana, not Mexicali. We are here because the shelters over in Tijuana are full.
Mexican police stopped hundreds of anti-immigrant protesters from reaching a migrant shelter in the city of Tijuana. Tijuana residents had previously protested the migrants' arrival at the border city. They shouted "No to the invasion" in reference to the caravans. For their part, migrants say these demonstrations are isolated incidents that do not represent the Mexican people. And Tijuana's mayor, Juan Manuel Gastelum, has asked the Mexican government for resources to accommodate the various migrant caravans. In a radio interview, the mayor said that Tijuana needs police reinforcements plus 100 million pesos in funding to provide aid to migrants. He also stated that he finds it hard to believe that nobody is paying the migrants to make the trek to the north. Various social organizations from the U.S. and Canada have gathered in the Mexican town of Tijuana to show their support for the migrant caravan. This comes just a day after an anti-immigrant protest broke out in the same town. Our correspondent Pablo Perez brings us more.
Well, we are now in downtown Tijuana, this multicultural and diverse border town between Mexico and the United States. And, well, we have seen so many different things happening in these last few days. And, well, contrasting with the violence that was visually present yesterday by a small group of radical extremists that expressed themselves with racism and xenophobic slurs directed towards the migrant community. Well, today there was a meeting of different non-social and civilian organizations and also different churches that not only from here from Tijuana but also from the other side of the border coming down from San Diego and Los Angeles to show their solidarity and to praise the effort made by the migrant community of the Migrant Caravan. So we have the two different point of views in the same city, in the same area, and it seems that the people that want to respect the human rights of the Central American migrants is more present today than it was yesterday, and they are calling all the citizenship to action to show them that the people in Tijuana is not against migrants, and this is something very coherent with the nature of this city, where it's calculated that over 60% of the population comes from another state in Mexico or another country.
We thank Pablo Perez for that report. And after being temporarily closed down overnight, the border crossing of San Isidro has been reopened. Authorities say the crossing was closed to beef up security with around 100 soldiers installing barbed wire along the crossing. And now let's go back to the G20 counter forum that is ongoing in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Currently, Colombian Senator Gustavo Petro is speaking. Let's listen in.
Diversidad en las regiones de Colombia a levantar esta bandera de la Colombia humana. ¿Qué fue lo que interpretó la gente que me acompañó en mi discurso de esa sociedad que estaba ansiosa de transformaciones y de esperanza, en dónde están las variables que permiten mostrar a Colombia, a diferencia de que lo que siempre habría sido en estos escenarios, como un ejemplo a mostrar, en medio precisamente de una caída de gobiernos del viejo progresismo y de ascensos en muchas partes del mundo de las extremas derechas. El panorama.
It looks like we're having some technical difficulties with this translation, but we will get back to you as soon as we can. Meanwhile, in Ecuador, protests against budget cuts to public universities in the 2019 budget proposed by the government. The austerity measures come in a series of moves by the government of Lenín Moreno that has cut nearly $150 million from public education. Students are demanding a higher budget and ask authorities to sit at a negotiation table with the education sector.
We are marching to reject the cuts in the public university budget, which President Lenín Moreno is trying to implement in the 2019 budget. It is important for all of us, students, to resist together against the government measures.
We are marching to reject the cuts in the public university budget, which President Lenín Moreno is trying to implement in the 2019 budget. It is important for all the students to resist together against the government measures.
And to talk about this, our correspondent Denise Herrera brings us more from the student demonstration in Quito.
Hello, good afternoon. Students from Ecuadorian public and private university were marching today in Quito against huge education cuts presented in the state general budget presented by the Ministry of Economy, Richard Martinez, who confirmed and announced that there is a cutback on the budget, in the state budget. Approximately 145 million are contemplated for higher education. Students are demanding today that it represents a setback on education policy, and also they are calling to the authorities, they are calling to President Lenín Moreno to meet them, and they can be part of the discussion about this general budget. They try to talk with President Lenín Moreno, but the police stopped them. So it's all for now. Back to you at the studio.
We thank Denise Herrera for that report, and now let's try to go back to Buenos Aires, Argentina, where Gustavo Petro is speaking. Let's try to listen in.
One war that ends and another one that starts, but to build the basis of a permanent cohabitation in times, which could not be established but without an agreement. That has never existed in Colombia from the perspective of inclusion. And here comes the education of the society of knowledge that became one of the highly mobilizing slogans. Bet on not how much the price of oil goes up to see if they appropriate it privately or redistribute socially, but how we separate from oil. We detach from oil. Of coal. Colombia is the 5th world exporter of coal. And what is being mentioned here, the dialectic of avocado and oil, because avocado becomes a symbol of the campaign. I don't know if you tasted avocado in Chile, Barcelona, Argentina. Avocado was not only a step back, as the right wing said, to agriculture, but it was showing how in a structure where fertile land does not produce food because it has been fearlessly concentrated in the hands of the drug traffickers that have it as money launder, reminding us of the feudal times and not of production. In a peasant world displaced by violence and where all Colombians are somehow the sons sons or grandsons of farmers vindicate the avocado and the possibility of transforming it industrially versus an economy of oil and coal extractivists were two different development models. One was productive and the other one is extractive. But that difference, and we said that in a public plazas, production means not only questioning the land tenure in Colombia, the agrarian reform, but the educational system, because to produce we have to think. We must have knowledge, and not only all ancient knowledge of popular wisdom. Production in 21st century implies knowledge. Extraction can resign knowledge. Extracting oil and coal has techniques and knowledge, but reduced, while farming the land in this industry means millions of jobs. Extraction of materials, just tens of thousands of jobs. The extractivist activities lives from income, and political struggles are highly violent and corrupt to get over money easily. A productive society is a more sustainable society. Knowledge, earning the money worked. Finally, remember the political economy that said that wealth comes from work, not from extraction, would allow us to think in Latin America as the vanguard of humanity. Because not only produce, but know, and also how to produce in the 21st century, leads us to an essential discussion that the extractivist economy of oil, coal, and gas does not provide. How can we produce is how to sustain life on the planet. And allow me, I have had speeches of 3 hours, so please correct me my time. This topic of how to produce in the 21st century, based on knowledge, leads us to a discussion within Latin America progressivism that we proposed with relative success in Colombia. How to produce means a new relation with nature, while extractivism talks about living even with relative social justice, but that would not be sustainable by exporting oil, coal, and gas to being one of the pillars of the fossil society that produces climate change, that places us on the border of vital extinguishment, that created this civilization crisis in the world, and the panic of the middle class that feels, before the information that it collects somehow, that the final time of consumption has arrived. And bets, as in 1933, to the extreme right wings, which is not as sustainable at that time, because there is a civilization crisis. If you allow me to talk theoretical, looking in the atmosphere, what Marx had analyzed, produce more to sell more, to earn more. Not of the planet geographically, but the human existence in a more intensive way, what they call neoliberalism today. This expanded accumulation of capital has a reflect on the atmosphere that Marx did not find. The growth of greenhouse gases due to coal, oil, and gas, and therefore the water cycle, and therefore the possibility of the extinguishment of humanity and life. The essential contradiction that Marx saw in the 19th century between capital and proletarian seems now to have another type of essential contradiction, which is between capital and life.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Brazil's lower house is set to once again debate the controversial school without a party bill, a proposed law that would suppress what the far right calls the indoctrination of students at schools.
Analysis and voting on the school without a party bill is returning to the lower house on November 20th. Meanwhile, educator unions, student movements, and even judges of the Supreme Court are showing the rejection of the bill.
We are here at this resistance camp where we have always defended public and secular education. We fight for democratic and socially diverse schools. That's what Brazilian teachers are fighting for.
This new bill is considered to be unconstitutional. It's a bill that bans not only sexual education and reflections on gender, it censors teaching, with a campaign against the school's supposed indoctrination. This has led to harassment and death threats against teachers who only want to exercise their right to teach.
This is a very subjective matter because if one history teacher wants to bring out a subject like African religions, then when a Christian religious student goes back home after class and talks about that subject, that teacher can be prosecuted and criminalized. The same example can happen if a biology teacher dares to bring out Darwin's evolution theory that opposes the creationist theory. So what people actually are is a universal education that adheres to scientific facts.
According to the law, teachers won't be able to address current subjects like social inequality, racism, and hate crimes against sexual diverse communities in their classrooms.
This is a fallacy that suffocates education efforts. People should be able to have different opinions without being criminalized, and they should also be able to share them. We should be able to teach future citizens how to defend their own opinions without being manipulated by other ones.
Deputy Eduardo Bolsonaro predicts that next year, the Congress will be even more conservative, and therefore it will be even easier to approve laws like this one, with the far-right parliament members in the House.
Almost 3,000 people have been evacuated in Guatemala after the Fuego volcano erupted again. Authorities declared a red alert as security forces closed roads and helped with evacuations. In June of this year, the Fuego volcano erupted, killing more than 300 people. Our correspondent in Guatemala, Santiago Boton, brings us more.
A red alert has been issued in the municipality of Escuintla for a new eruption of the Fuego volcano. Several rescue operation teams are working together to evacuate many families living near the volcano, which killed many people in June 2018. Rescue teams announced that 500 people have been evacuated already and say they are working on moving 2,000 people to Escuintla's stadium. Last night, local authorities of the Zacatepec and Escuintla departments held a meeting to coordinate evacuation procedures along with community authorities.
We thank Santiago for that report. People in Peru are protesting outside the Uruguayan ambassador's home in Lima after former President Alan Garcia applied for asylum in Uruguay. Demonstrators protested in support and against the former president. Garcia is under investigation for allegedly receiving bribes from Brazilian construction company Odebrecht during the construction of Lima's subway system. Our correspondent in Lima, Jaime Herrera, has the latest on Garcia.
Former President Alan Garcia is staying at the Uruguayan ambassador's home for the second day in a row. He went there to apply for political asylum and is now waiting the response on this request. This after a judge in Lima ordered that he not be allowed to leave the country for 18 months following the Attorney General's office investigation into Garcia for money laundering and corruption. The former president's lawyers said they decided to ask for asylum after they heard rumors that the Attorney General's office would ask for preventive detention for Garcia. Protests have been taking place outside the Uruguayan ambassador's home in Lima, and more protests are expected today. Meanwhile, Peruvian President Martín Vizcarra has said there is no political persecution in Peru and that all citizens should answer to the law. Meanwhile, local media outlets have started reporting on this story using headlines such as "Fugitive flees justice" and "He escapes for the second time."
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Egypt has announced that it would hold talks with Ethiopia soon to iron out differences over an Ethiopian dam on the River Nile. Cairo reportedly sees the dam as a threat to its water supplies. The two countries have already held meetings over the $4 billion hydroelectric Grand Renaissance Dam, but have yet to reach a deal on managing flows and other issues. Egypt fears the dam will restrict the waters coming down to its fields and reservoirs. Kenya has launched its first Coast Guard unit to boost maritime security and tackle illegal fishing. Until now, Kenya has solely relied on the Navy. Now, the Coast Guard will be responsible for dealing with illegal fishing, smuggling, drug trafficking, rescue services, and pollution control, among other duties. However, critics and skepticals are skeptical as the new unit currently has only one boat and over 1,000 kilometers of coastline to patrol. And now it's time to bring you more stories from around the world.
At least 25 Palestinians have been injured by Israeli forces using tear gas during a rally in the Gaza Strip. Palestinians gathered in support of the flotilla Freedom Ship 16 that set sail from the port of Gaza to try and break the Israeli siege. Rocks were then thrown at the fans, leading to the Israelis firing tear gas. Those wounded and suffering from tear gas inhalation were rushed to the hospital. The siege of Gaza by land, sea and air began by Israel and Egypt in 2007 after the electoral victory of Hamas. A political opposition leader in Azerbaijan has been released from custody and ordered to pay a $1,500 fine for organizing a memorial march. Ari Karimli of the Popular Front Party was arrested during the march on Saturday in remembrance of those killed during the country's secession from the Soviet Union. After his release, he vowed to continue rallying in memory of those who died.
Our action was legitimate. Actually, the way those who tried to stop us act was illegal. Most importantly, we uncovered a traitorous plan with our persistence. They want to shut down Martyrs Avenue to the people.
The Sri Lankan president had apologized to Buddhist monks after authorities used tear gas and water cannons against them as they gathered to demand the release of the Secretary General of Bodubala Sena, a nationalist organization. They had gathered to protest against the imprisonment of the Secretary General and demanding an audience with the President to hand over a written request for his release. The President has promised an investigation into the incident.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.